Hey guys, Journey to Truth is going to Hawaii. Join us in 2026 for Journey to Truth's first ever vacation conference on the Big Island at the beautiful Queen Emma Community Center in Kona. Enjoy Hawaii as we travel to sacred sites and connect with our Lemurian past and reactivate the land. It's time to get our bodies moving and take a boots on the ground approach to the awakening. We'll also be making a trip to Volcano National Park to pay our respect to Pele, the goddess of fire. We'll then journey to the water for an ocean adventure with our multi-dimensional aquatic family. We'll gear up and head to the harbor as we set sail under the sun for an activating day on the water while we experience the Hawaiian ocean life like never before. Enjoy Hawaiian sunsets and walks on the beach while connecting with Soul Family and learning a few things from our amazing lineup of speakers. Aloha! Grab your ticket today at journeytotruth.online and join us for this once-in-a-lifetime activating getaway.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
All right. Now we're on the higher timeline, so we're ready to
Right. Perfect.
I claim that.
right.
We shift the timeline.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. A few things before we get started. Our Hawaii conference is coming up April 20th through the 24th on the Big Island next year, and we're very excited about it. And tickets are available at on our website, journeytotruth.online. If you'd like to come go on some ocean adventures with the dolphins and whales, we're going to be out on a boat. We're going to go to some sacred sites, Volcano National Park, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers. It's a vacation/retreat/conference. It's a first of its kind for us anyway. So if you're interested, we'd love to see you out there, and you can grab a ticket at journeytotruth.online. That link is below in the description. And today we are joined by my new good friend, Maureen St. Germain. I recently saw her speak at a conference here in Sedona, and I was blown away by her talk, covering things like 5D and other timelines, and I was resonating with a lot of it, and we connected after that. And here we are today, and I'm excited to get into everything she has to offer. She's authored 8 books. She runs a mystery school, among many other things, and we're going to cover all of that today, and including a remote viewing course that she's now recently getting ready to launch, actually, and we'll talk about that too. But there's so many things that we connected with as far as the timeline stuff, because that's what my book is about, and she kind of covers a different aspect of it. So that's where we're going to start off with, covering these other timelines, and in particular, something you said in your presentation about these other timelines can come back to haunt you if you don't close them down. And that's not exactly how you said it, but that's the way I interpreted it, because it can come back and haunt you in your dreams, because there's like echoes that come through, and they manipulate, or they can affect your reality directly, your current reality. So maybe you can elaborate that and introduce yourself and all that other stuff, and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, it's my deep pleasure to be here with you, Tyler, and Aaron. And the first thing that I want to say to the entire audience is I was blown away by Tyler's book. When I met him, I knew it was important to connect, and bought his book, maybe gave me his book. Anyway, I couldn't put it down. And I was so upset with you, Tyler, that this book was so engaging. And I loved how you started out with, maybe this is just a story. And then when you finish reading it, it's the truth. And it's a crazy making truth, because as people are just now beginning to realize that there's more than one timeline. And this is something as mystic I have seen and experienced personally. And what Tyler's talking about is something that I share with people, and I show people that there are so many versions of the reality. Every choice you make, there's 5 different possible choices. And usually the top 2 are the ones that you run. And you don't always run both of them, but you run enough of the alternate reality that it can cause a leakage or drainage of your own energy into that other timeline. Another thing that can happen is that you can actually have outside entities siphoning off a piece of you and creating an alternate version of you and a timeline version of you. And so there's a lot of ways that you can work around this. And that's some of the stuff that I talked about in the book, Waking Up in 5D. So one of the things that I want to share with you right away is that I do have a guided meditation called the Golden Braiding
Timeline.
your timelines. Yeah, timeline braids. Thank you. And this particular meditation has not made it to my app, which is called Illuminate. There's over 40 guided meditations on that app. But this is so brand new that I'm offering it to you. If you hear me talking about it right now and you want it, just send us a note. We'll get to those kind of details later. Stay with us. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. You know, it's like,
Right. And so you never actually did say why you were upset with me. You just said you were upset with me
because I couldn't put it down. I couldn't put it
Okay.
down. And talk about timelines. I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing this. Well, Eb and I am still in Australia. My husband's still in Australia. I'll just sit here and read. And I did. And it truly, for those of you, if you have never read his book, you're in for a nice treat. There's very few books in my life that I haven't been able to put down. And I read a lot of books.
Well, that
So-
means a lot. That's an amazing compliment. Thank you so much. So let's
Well, I want to say one other thing, and that is, as an author, knowing your history and knowing your background, I thought the book was extraordinarily well written. And that's what makes it such a good read, because it isn't just the content, it's the delivery. You've done such a wonderful job of conveying what you wanted to say in a clear and concise way. You're not repeating yourself. It's just brilliant.
Wow.
I-
Well, you're making me
second
want to
that.
go back and read it.
I second that.
I
I
can go
can
back
attest-
and reread it.
I can attest to that and it's funny because I knew at least 75% of your story that you tell in the book, but I still couldn't put it down. I still was like engaged and intrigued the entire time, even though a lot of it I already knew.
Well, and for
obviously-
me, this is really important. I'm a mystic. I have had alternative experiences, but
Mhm.
I've downloaded information on all these kinds of experiences that Tyler has documented. And so for me, it was validation. I'm getting all this information and sharing it with people, teaching people how to fix it. But Tyler's given us the real deal.
Mhm. Well,
So,
I appreciate all the
each
kind words.
part.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Tyler,
it.
you turned into the
We're gonna go
guest
to
on the
your
show,
head, Tyler.
I'm not the guest. Yeah.
We're
I
interviewing
can
you
help.
now.
I can help you if your head gets too big for your hat.
I appreciate
Right.
the kind words, but we're interviewing you today, Maureen. So, uh,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
but
go ahead.
yeah, I absolutely love what you covered in that presentation and what you cover in your books about the other timelines as well. And that's kind of what we're going to start with. So maybe you can elaborate on how these other timelines, if you don't close them, how they can affect your reality today and why you need to shut that down in order to hopefully move forward. Yeah.
So again, this is the difference between boots on the ground and head in the clouds. Okay, so my experience was I was shown the oversoul and what it looks like, and the best way to describe it is to say it's like a jellyfish with all these tendrils. Okay, so the oversoul is the soul above your higher self, and it's got all the versions of you. And so what I was shown is that there was a big mess. Like, some people, they put wires away in a box and they're all neatly tied and they've got little bag ties on them or something to hold them all in their proper little rolls. And there's other people just throw stuff in there. And when you want something, you're just, it's a big mess. So I could see the big mess version, and I was shown how to create what's called timeline braids and to bring it all together and to dismiss or remove those, what I will call recalcitrant or random extraneous kind of braids, because there are versions of you that can exist because you were farmed, a chunk of your skin. Some people have divots in their skin. I was one of those people, and I was shown that they were using it to create false versions of me. And then those false versions of me would go on and do whatever I knew how to do on those inner planes. All of that can be brought back together. You can dismiss and remove and release all of those false selves, but you and I need to know to do this. I also believe that this is why we're seeing so much of this information in movies, so that we get the sense of, oh, that's what they're doing. What was that movie? They cloned Tyrone. You remember that movie?
Right.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
That's truth. I mean, that's not a sci-fi.
Exactly. And most of them aren't. Most of them are just training videos, really, to give us the heads up. And we're the ones that are laughing and pretending, oh, yeah, that's not real, but it is real. And that's what's going on for all of us. And the things that the more we know we don't know. And what I have come to conclude is we are responsible. We have the ability, and it is incumbent upon us to study, to learn, to listen to shows like you, to read your books, to read my books, and to get up to speed so that we cannot be manipulated or coerced or maneuvered.
Right, right. And
Yes.
maybe you can explain, this closing down another timeline, and you used an example before of living in one location and you moved, but you never closed that timeline down, and it was kind of affecting your reality now, holding you back. So you can explain how that happens and how you can detach from that.
Well, sometimes we have uncertainty about a choice, and that's usually when these double timelines start to materialize. And so, it could be a person who has a divorce, and on one side they feel guilty for the divorce. They wish they could have worked it out. Another side of them knows that it's never going to work out, and we're just not going to be able to pull it together. So you go for the divorce, but you have all this regret in your head. And the regret in your head feeds the alternate reality. So it is when we make a choice and we leave another choice behind, but we're filled with loss or regret or some other kind of emotional entanglement that causes us to continue to fund FUND, fund the reality that we don't want because we're still putting energy on it. And the energy can be either regret, it could be wishful thinking. What if you make a decision to go to a college and you choose one college and then you think, oh, I wish I'd have gone to the other one. They've got so much better programs, blah, blah, blah. And I wish I'd have seen that kind of thing, So every time we have those kinds of choices, our emotional feedback to ourselves causes us to fund the alternate version as well as this one. And then that drains our energy.
Wow, that's a
Yeah. Well
wonderful
said.
explanation. So, what would you recommend people do about that if we find ourselves having that regret or caught in those timeline loops, or those toxic thoughts, we just spiral.
One of my specialties is guided meditations because I was one of those people with monkey mind and I could never turn it off. So there is a guided meditation called Reality Remix, and that's an easy way to change the reality. You have a version of the reality that's running in your head, and you have the one you're living. And so you just do a remix, and it's a way to do that. So if I were to give you a short version to do here on the air, you would allow yourself to think about the other one and then mentally close it down, meaning you walk away, you close the door, you see yourself moving away. You change the situation. Now, there are exceptions because if it's a relationship, let's say you break up with someone and that other person still wants to be with you. They might be fantasizing about you. They might be carrying the torch for you, and they're funding the alternate version. And then your regret, maybe I hurt him or her, maybe we could have worked it out. That regret funds it as well. So now it's got a lot of power and energy. But I have even had clients who've had what I call bleed through. And in the dream time, the ex-boyfriend comes back into the dream times, soliciting, going on dates and that sort of thing, to the woman who's married to someone else now. Quite amazing.
Yeah, that's all very real. That's all very
Yep.
real, and that absolutely happens, and it actually can create confusion. So meditations like the one you offer, I think, can be quite helpful to
Mhm.
provide clarity because sometimes, whenever we start tapping into these other realms and having these broader understandings of these other realities and timelines and things like that, it can definitely actually become confusing, and you might even feel lost at times. So we
Mm.
we're all just this is uncharted territory for most people once they start waking up. So to have people to come to that have already experienced it and have the advice and the tools, that's very beneficial. So thank you for that.
You could even change the past. Mhm.
Tell me
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. That's great.
And again, the way you do this is with your clear intention, and again, you remix the reality. Um, And you can also set the framework. I'll tell you a funny story that I had a bathroom that I didn't like in one of my homes, and it was off in the corner, and it was cold, and it had a heater, but nobody ever turned it on. Had a little mold growing in the shower, and one day we had a flood, and that bathroom flooded. So we took all the wallpaper down, and I said to myself, before the wallpaper goes up, I'm going to write on the wall. And I wrote, "This is a sweet bathroom. This is the best bathroom for this family room. This is in a great location. It's got such nice energy." And we put the wallpaper up on top of it. Every house guest came back to the kitchen and said exactly what was written on the wall. It was hilarious, you know? So,
That's amazing.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the power of words and the subconscious
Mhm.
mind, that
Mhm.
so those words are still they still carry frequency that emanates
Mhm.
throughout the bathroom. So it's just like
Yeah.
programming water or food or anything else too.
It's like when you put words on the glasses of water and then you take a picture like
Mhm.
Moto
Mhm.
did,
Right.
and it
Mhm.
literally changes the structure of the water. So
Mhm.
what do you think it's doing to other, people in the room or you or,
So
everything?
yeah, exactly. So let's talk about misplacing things in other dimensions in 5D or 3D or whatever the case may be. If you can't find something like a lost item, and you've looked in that spot a million times and all of a sudden it shows up there, and you've explained this in the past, I think you might even talked about it in your presentation, it's because you're quite literally operating at different frequencies at different times, and you might have elevated to a higher frequency where that object is no longer there, and then until you come back down, it'll reappear. Is that something that you can elaborate on any further? Because I think that
Yeah, it's actually what you just said was perfect, except for the last part was a little backwards. So let's say I'm in a yummy place. I've done my errands. I come home and I put my favorite pen on the desk and I walk away. And then I think, oh, I want to use that pen to write some notes to myself. And you go to find it and you don't find it. And you think to yourself, I just put it here. I remember putting it here. That's when you're in this yummy place, you've come back from your errands, you're feeling good, you're feeling satisfied. There's a quality of 5D. There's no polarity, there's no self judgment. You've completed your errands, but now you want to do something different. And you're being more like, I got to get this done. I got to write this note before I forget it. And so that's when you drop back down into 3D. So if you set something down in 5D and you cannot find it, it's very likely that you need to settle your energy and allow yourself to go higher. And the easy way to do it is just say, I can't find it. I let go. I want to find it, and I'm choosing to be okay with when it shows up. And usually it shows up right away. And it usually shows up where you left it. And I have the funny story behind this is years ago when one of my kids was home, I had this experience And it was I'll call it similar to something else that had happened to me, but now I had a witness. And my son came in and he pulled something out of his backpack and then put it back, came in my kitchen and said, "I want to show you something, Mom." And he was all excited about it. And he went back to his backpack and it wasn't there. And he said, "Mom, I just put it there." And I said, "I know, I saw you do it." And I said, "Oh, well, it's probably in a higher dimension. Let's come back in the kitchen, finish telling me your story, and then we'll look for it." By this time, he'd already pulled everything out of the backpack. He put everything back. We walked in the kitchen. He finished his story. We went back to the living room where the backpack was. Right on top was the thing he wanted to show me.
Right. Yeah.
And that's when I knew I wasn't making it up. Because up until this time, when something disappeared and I would ask my guides, "Well, where is my stuff, my ring, my geometry, whatever?" I would always be told, "Oh, well, it's in a higher dimension." And initially, I was doing logic and telling myself, "Well, we send monkeys in space to experiment. So I probably send my stuff ahead so that when I get there, my stuff is there." Now, this was me back then trying to figure it out. And then one day I was told, "You, Maureen, were in a higher dimension when you put it down." And I figured if I'm doing it, so is everybody else.
Right. Yeah, it's just
Right.
like what they call 1 foot in 5D sometimes, yeah.
We're all always basically shifting all the time, whether we realize it or not, right? So, but usually it's maybe just very incremental. But I feel like maybe if you're able to kind of like go up to a higher dimension enough that literally an object that you set down, if you go down lower, will be missing like you experienced until you shift back up to whatever
Yeah, it's like
frequency
Russian
you were at
dolls. And I think your comment about shifting and being different, I have a funny story when one of my sons was always in trouble, always acting out. And I called my mom one time and said that he had done something really mature. And I was so excited as a mom that I finally could see some maturity in this 16-year-old. And she said, "Well, honey, kids don't grow up in a straight line." And I was so naive. I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, usually when they do something mature, they follow it with something stupid." And that's us. We do that
Yeah.
too. We get to a high place and then, it's not sustainable. So we drop back down. And that's what you just said, that's what you described. And it is when we begin to understand that that's the human nature and it's a sine wave, but it isn't across this way. It's got an angle to it. And we're doing the sine wave up, higher and higher.
But
So
overall, we're going.
even if we drop down, our dropping down isn't as low as it was maybe yesterday. And it is also true that humanity can sustain that element of non-judgment and unconditional love. You can sustain it. We're at that place where we can sustain it. But we're still walking around with some unfinished business, some wounds from childhood that we don't remember, situations that made us feel hurt or misunderstood. And then when somebody does something that hits that trigger, we drop back down into 3D. So the fastest way to stay fifth dimensional is to do your emotional work and to love yourself and to love your ego,
Well,
and step into your step into your shame. And that's not easy. But when we, one day I had I have a year-long group of people that work with me every year for a full year. And one of the exercises was write down everything you're ashamed of. Now find someone in your life that you can read this list to. And what happens is when you read the list, and it's not like you're admitting to your wife that you cheated or that, you're finding your old school teacher and telling him or her you cheated on the exam. No, it's about finding someone that is open and loving and supportive of you. They hear your list and then they forget it. But you have unlocked the lockdown, and that shame doesn't hold you hostage anymore. It's huge.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well said. And as far as like you're talking about this wave, right? And then like as soon as you do
Mhm.
something mature, you do something stupid. I also think that's the subconscious mind, the programming. So we often tell ourselves like it's once things get good in life, we tell ourselves this can't possibly be good. This can't be happening to me.
You self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage, but it's
Yeah.
not you don't intentionally do it,
Subconscious.
it's a subconscious
Right.
thing. But if you the more you practice, whatever practice it is that's bringing you up, elevating your frequency, you create that new baseline is what you guys were saying. So it's like, yeah, there's ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
but it's always
Yeah,
been
you're absolutely right, Tyler. There is programming to cause us to devolve and to drop into some of those behaviors because I've seen it. And see, I don't have to play it like Tyler's had to play at it. I get to observe it and talk about it. And you're absolutely right. I've seen that. There's actually two primary messages that are being broadcast all the time on the Wi-Fi, on the cell phone towers, on the television towers, radio towers, and the two messages are forget, 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 reject, reject, reject. Now think about it. Forget means you maybe hear something and it triggers a memory, but then you reject it.
right.
Mm.
And or you remember something, but then you forget it before you even get to the point where you're going to reject it. It's quite interesting. Now, here's what happens when you do meditation on a regular basis, you start to step out of the matrix. And I'll tell you one thing that you can do. Now, I have this prayer in a couple of my books, and I'm just going to quote part of it, but it's a bedtime prayer. And it says, I will awaken well rested no matter what the night holds. Because if you're a parent, you might have a surprise in the middle of the night. You never know. More often than just being on your own or in a childless relationship. So I'm waking up well rested no matter what the night holds. And I am waking up in 5D outside the matrix. Because 5D is also a matrix until you step out of the 5D matrix and into the reality.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy, they've got us
And
coming and going.
I think the same thing
Yeah.
about certain specific locations too. I would say that Sedona, I call it pocket reality, and because I travel a lot, and you go to these lower matrix 3D level like cities. I've been there, and when you drive into Sedona, it's definitely a different energy, completely different. It feels like you're in a pocket reality that's still a matrix, but the rules are different because more people are open and accepting of these things that aren't supposed to exist. Therefore, it allows that to happen here. So
Right.
it's like you're still, even though you're ascending into a higher frequency, doesn't mean you've essentially escaped the matrix entirely. It's just another version of it. And then you break that programming eventually until whatever the journey looks like. I mean, I guess that's all for us to find out, as we evolve. But go ahead.
That leads me to my morning prayer, which is that I am bringing in my divine matrix, my divine plan, my ideal outcome, and that I am aligned and fully supported by source, by spirit, to be the full on version of the highest version of me today that I could be today. And it changes everything when you make that conscious choice.
Right. So
Yeah.
we can talk about timelines all day, but I have some other things I want to get to. And you run this mystery school and you teach people how to activate their Merkaba and amplify the effects of that. And just from talking to you in the past, one of the things that you said happens sometimes is when people really truly tap into these abilities. The government is surveilling and targeting these people. They know when people come online and know the black helicopters come by and things like that. How do you think they could possibly know that? How are they monitoring that when people come online?
Well, I've had it happen to me so many times where I'll call them black ops guys show up and also in the classes. Initially, when I was teaching the Merkaba, because the Merkaba is so powerful, because it plugs you into your divine self and eliminates a lot of the effluvia that's being broadcast at us. If you're doing the Merkaba actively every day, all that stuff, all that programming, it doesn't touch you. So people started having these experiences and I had to tell them. And what I would tell them is that there are black helicopters, for example, and when you come online, the black helicopters will show up and they will want to read your field. Now, it is my experience that they're not going to throw you in jail or anything like that, but I'll call it a branch of our government. I don't have a name for it. Has the job of finding and observing otherworldly beings, illegal immigrants, if you will. And we're not talking green card. We're talking other planets, other star systems. So they're keeping track of those beings because they emit certain frequencies. But the Merkaba is a very highly evolved frequency. So when you turn on your Merkaba, when you activate, when you come online, and the Merkaba isn't the only way, and people can spontaneously activate their Merkaba without even knowing that they're doing it, for example. But for over 20 years, I taught that all over the world. And so I started teaching people that the black helicopters could and would come. And I recommend that you put on the cloak of invisibility. You call in the energy to make yourself invisible so that you are not noticed by those who appear to be operatives of some organization. Now, I've had them sit next to me on a plane. I had one guy try to pick my brain, and I telepathed to him, I'm not that important. And then I said, and if I were, they wouldn't have sent you.
Yeah, there you go.
There
That's
you go.
the insult. Yeah.
Yeah,
The-
that's it. That's so interesting because I've heard so many stories of people that uh, they'll tell the story and they're like, as soon as they started having various forms of ET contact, right? Uh, Immediately the black helicopters start, like you said, and agents and people like that will start coming to their house, following them, trying to almost like get to them in different ways.
Right. And again,
Yeah.
it's kind of intimidation, but it isn't meant. I truly believe it is not meant to be intimidation. It's meant to be observation. And they just want to make sure, like in the movie Men in Black, that you're not one of them, one of those other guys. And for whatever reason, they haven't got the technology to discern the difference between an enlightened being or a turned on Merkaba and some of these other beings. Maybe the technology just isn't there. I don't know. But I'm quite convinced that their job is simply observational. And the minute you tell them, I'm not that important, they go away. They absolutely go away because, and the other thing is, we're not a threat. You and I and Tyler, we're not a threat. We're not interested in forming a group to do something. We're simply trying to help people step into their sovereignty and help people begin to own what's really going on. And if enough of us do that, it just changes automatically.
right.
Right.
Yeah, there's no question. I do think there are some intimidation factors there because what would that do? That would maybe force you or scare you into, okay, I'm not going to tap into that anymore because I don't want these guys to come take my family or whatever. I think there's a level of that, but once you understand your power and that you are the one with the power, you hold those
They
cards,
can't touch
then
you.
yeah, then
Yeah.
they can't touch you.
Right. But
And
they're banking on that you don't know that.
right,
A lot of them. I think there's
Yeah,
maybe
and
different.
there
But
are a few, excuse me, there are some very well documented exceptions of people that you probably have interviewed and worked with, and certainly I have too. I think of Alex Collier, who for a
oh, yeah.
long time thought he was being abducted, and he finally came to the conclusion that it was his family that was retrieving him. It takes a whole different look to it.
A lot of
so
ET contactees start off like that, where they think they're being abducted and it's a traumatic, and then they realize, oh, it's my star family that's
Mhm.
whole time, and then it becomes a beautiful thing.
Right,
Many stories like that.
right. And see, we're indoctrinated to think we're humans,
Right.
when in fact we're far grander than that. We're far greater than that. And
Yeah.
so the important thing is you and I have free will. The more we practice integrity, the stronger our capacity to hold the reality that we want to hold. So, in other words, if I'm stealing stuff from the office, if I'm cheating my boss at the cash register, I'm telling the universe there's not enough. There's not enough.
Right.
And then the universe is going to give it back to me in whatever way that I find acceptable. And that may come in to these kinds of things that happen to us. And the reason that we don't have the control is because we're not being autonomous. We're not owning that we're sovereign. And if we're sovereign, we don't have a need to rain on anyone else's parade.
Right.
And so once we kind of get that in our brain, that each and every one of us is special, each and every one of us has the capacity to control the reality, and they can control their environment, it changes everything.
Right.
Just to tell yourself, you know what? I have more control than I thought I did. I can control this. Think of how much control a baby has over his parents. That's
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We have to,
Right.
A great
do.
analogy. Great analogy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to ask you, you were talking about these groups monitoring extraterrestrials and people who come online. Um, and you mentioned before we went on air, you said, remind me to tell you about my job off planet. So maybe we could segue into that because I'm very curious to see what that is.
Okay, so my job is a diplomat, and you can see that that would explain a lot of things, how I know stuff, even though I haven't had those experiences, and how come I know about certain things, but nobody's told me. Like the client that came to me totally freaked out because she'd been raped by a being while she's in bed next to her husband. And for me to be able to say that, to give that A, validity that it did happen, and B, that, the experience that she had, wasn't her fault, and that she didn't bring it on, that being took advantage of her. But somehow, somewhere in her world, she created that window. Now, I know other people who have made contracts, for example, with other beings and maybe other lifetimes. And then those contracts come due while they're here, and they think, what the heck? I didn't bring this on, but maybe they agreed to it at other levels. So I one time had an experience where I put on my leggings. I wear compression leggings when I fly, and I was flying all the time. And I was going from the West Coast to the East Coast. And when I arrived in New York and was getting undressed, I noticed that my leggings were on backwards.
Hmm.
And I thought, I think I left the plane. I think and I started to go back and look at it, and I could see, we've all heard stories how when you go into special negotiations, everybody's in the same clothing. So you disrobe and you wash, and then you put on the gown that everyone is wearing. And I think that's what happened. But then I wasn't satisfied to think that maybe I made up that whole story. So then I asked Tom Dongo, my friend, and he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. The plane was paused in time. I was at the window seat. They just let me out of the plane. I entered a ship, and we went away. We did some kind of negotiation work, and then they brought me back, and I inserted back in the time that I had left.
And your pants were on backwards.
And my pants on backwards, yeah. Made me think of Born Identity. Remember that? Where he deliberately set some things in motion so he would be able to remember?
Yeah.
So that was my cue that
Right.
that I really was doing these things. And, it's like if you're a researcher or, somebody who works at City Hall who's always receiving reports about what's wrong with various apartments or whatever, you know the inside story, even though you have never needed to experience those things. And that's how come I know so much stuff.
So,
Because just if I have the information that I've collected, and I just didn't realize how I knew
so
until much.
when you say you're a diplomat off world, off planet or whatever, I know you just explained what that looks like here, but how did you come to the conclusion that that's who you were? Was it from the experience on the plane that you went and had that, or
No, when it's a little bit like what you have described in your book, where you have an experience that doesn't add up, the backwards pants. And then you start to ask questions in your mind and in your meditations. And that's where I started to get answers. Then I mentioned it to Tom, and he corroborated my story. What I have since, because now I'm now open to it, I now have seen where I'm working in a very high level intergalactic situations plural, and working with building teams and collaborations among many very different groups.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you. I believe that. I mean, maybe a number of us are doing that, but I just like to hear when people actually are aware of what they're doing and what their job is, because it makes things a little easier down here too. Once you start piecing that back together too, because now you're not just lost.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I'm so good at remote viewing. Uh, You know, I was like a natural when I went to learn it.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean, that's apparently I mean, everyone can do it, but I think other people obviously have an amplified ability to see like that, and that's a highly sought after skill in the shadow world, right? And the private sector, they look for people like that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, if they're monitoring you with the helicopters and that stuff. Um,
well,
yeah.
it's kind of cool because I was told by my guides to go ahead and teach remote viewing. And then one day, Tom was at our house for dinner, and he was telling me how upset he was because he was going to teach a class on remote viewing, but his pal, who he was going to co-teach with, um, was under the weather and probably wasn't going to be able to work with him. And I just looked at him and I said, "Well, I'm teaching a class in like 6 weeks. Do you want to co-teach it with me?" And it was just amazing. And then we turned that into a course that people can take on our website.
That's amazing.
That's
And
that's
is
great.
that a course that's available now, but you have another one coming up, right? As well?
No, this is the one that's coming online.
Oh,
It's not. We offered that course live twice, and then we took the best of it and made it into a digital training so that you can watch it at any time.
oh, okay. I see. I see. So that will be available when?
Next week. So we're what 13, probably before the end of the month, maybe third or fourth week of the month
Perfect. Okay,
of
cool.
October. Mhm.
All right. So I kind of want to get into, these bleed through from these dreams and these other realities, kind of we were talking about earlier. But the dreams, whenever we go into this dream realm, right? What are your thoughts on, like, do you believe it's actually an alternate reality or do you think it's the mind doing something? Or do you think we're actually living out a parallel life in the dream?
Okay, so I have a couple of opinions about this kind of thing. There are people who tap into the morphogenic field of this kind of experience and think they're having this kind of experience when they're not. Okay. And there's also a whole cadre of people who believe they've been abducted, but instead they were induced with a memory of being abducted. And I believe there haven't been any abductions since 1998, and that everything after that has been memory implants, making us think that, because it still produces the same fear. It still produces the same, I'll call it wackiness. And the more you delve into it, the more you delve down that rabbit hole, then you're funding that reality. So you're seeing what you don't want. It's crazy. Um, but taking that whole piece and setting it aside, there's another whole group of people who have been artificially activated. And because they've been artificially activated, they have capacities to see things in their meditation right away. They have the ability to experience the third eye or the crown or the pineal being open, and they wouldn't label it that way, but they have, like, I'll call it superpowers. And it's not like they're controlling it. It just pops in, and it's not controllable by them when it starts to happen. And this includes dreams, that people are having dreams of real experiences outside this reality that are going on in real time. So, how is it that they can remember? And it's because a capacity in their physical body was tapped and opened prematurely. And because it was opened prematurely and used when they were in these alternate programs, the secret space programs, or whatever you want to call it, they then, in this reality, have retained some of that ability. And it's very interesting because you see it in a way that is very definable and precise. I'll give you two examples. One example is a man that I worked with in the military who, right out of the training, had marksman's level skill with a gun. Even though his parents never let him have a gun as a child, he never knew how to use a gun. He was never taught how to have a gun. And yet he's getting the high scores and the medals when they're in the munitions training. And then another example is somebody who is imaging in the dream time. Well, let me back up and say there's also the abilities that show up are latent, but they still show up. So even though the memory of the steps you took, the activity you did are gone, the cellular memory is retained. And so that's how come the guy who had never handled a gun could hit a bullseye right away, because he had the cellular memory in him. And Michael Sala told me that a lot of the young men who enter the military, having been in the secret space program, are given opportunities to move into officer training because they already have been identified at some level, and they pretend that it's the testing that told them this. But I don't think that's true. I think it's that they know who you are. And when you're called to go in the military, even if you're an enlisted man, then you get, put on the track to go to officers training school and become an officer.
Yeah.
So in the dream time, for example, especially those people who don't pursue that track, but still have had those experiences, they have dreams of fights. They have dreams of who they were, and they see themselves in those roles. They see themselves, in marches or as a solitary, but they keep seeing similar scenes that make sense only if you can add the piece that says they did something else, like the secret space program, for example.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there, and, like, sometimes it's an injected memory or a trauma of, like, a very traumatic abduction, and Max Spears used to talk about that, and one thing I took away from that was he said they realized at some point that they no longer had to take you as long as they can induce the trauma and make you believe that you had a traumatic experience. The belief was just as good as actually going through the actual traumatic experience. So as long as they can make you believe that you went through it, that's all they need to create an altar and split and use you in whatever capacity they need you for. So that is very true. That does happen, and I agree. And then as far as tapping into other memories, I like that's what the whole part two of my book is these memories that I have from these other realities are so vivid that I'm like, well, I need to write about it because there's something going on here. And I 100% feel like that it's not a dream. I'm like, there's just no way it can be a dream. And so it's such a real memory, but I know it's not me here now, like not Tyler, host Tyler, right? It's like another fractalized version of me that was maybe even used against my will, which you talked about earlier. And, yeah, as far as the marksman, the guy tapping into his skills, I think that happens, and if you're drawn to it in this lifetime, most likely you were involved in some lifetime, in some capacity. I think that's all very real, and I appreciate you elaborating like you did because I think it's important. And, Aaron, did you have something you wanted to say before we move on?
Um,
Looked like you were about to say something.
I mean, it's fascinating. Yeah, I think it's It's interesting. It makes you think of dreams in a whole new way, because it's like I think I think there's various different things that could be going on in dreams, but I definitely think one of them is that for sure that it's your consciousness in a different realm experiencing a reality just in a different realm, and then
Mhm.
that's you're kind of remembering usually just bits and pieces unless you've kind of worked up to being able to remember a full experience there, which not many people. I have a hard time remembering dreams a lot of times, but sometimes I'll just remember bits and pieces, or sometimes I'll remember it when I first wake up, but then it fades really quickly. And I think that's the case for a lot of people because it's like your consciousness is in this completely different realm, and it's hard for your 3D brain to process that or retain that memory unless you work to do
Yeah.
that or write it down right away or whatever. But I do think we're learning things and we're gaining things and a lot of times in our dream state. And I think a lot of times we're taken by our, maybe by our star family or onto a craft or somewhere else, or we go travel somewhere else intentionally to do different missions or to gain something, and then we kind of bring it back here. I
Right.
do think.
Maybe sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to remember because we're not supposed
Yeah.
to remember too. Also,
Right. Right.
Right. It doesn't serve us to remember all of the detail. And
Right.
then there's other people that are doing stuff in the alternate version of the reality that is so, I'll use the word fierce, that they feel like they need to remember so they can somehow rectify it or be different in this reality to, um, feel like they're bringing themselves back into balance.
right. Yeah. And that brings up an interesting point. Somebody told me if you want to remember your dreams or those experiences, you have to match the frequency of where it happened, and you can tap into it.
Mhm.
So it's not like
Yeah.
it's gone forever, but we're literally existing and experiencing it in a completely different composite of wavelengths, right? Of just a frequency. So if you can dial back into that frequency through a state of meditation, you might be able to reconnect with that dream and get the full download. And if you look at it like that, it might help you. As it might be a great tool instead of just telling yourself, "Oh, I'll never remember that dream." Maybe you can.
Well, your brain waves are in a different state. That's what when you go into meditation, you go into that like theta,
Right.
a completely different brainwave state, and that's when a lot of people you get epiphanies, you get downloads, and you get a lot of times contact from other beings, right?
Right.
Because they can reach you much easier in that state. And I think it's the same when we're dreaming because your brain's kind of at that state
Right.
Yeah,
there
yeah,
too.
So,
yeah, yeah.
so
And I'm with you, Aaron. I don't remember much of my dreams, although I do remember precognitive ones.
Hmm.
And um, because dreams seem to be even more important today than they were 20 years ago, I'm remembering more of them than I did before. But I also agree with you that there's a lot that we're doing that we choose not to remember, or we don't want to remember from that version of us to here because it could interfere with. I've been called to do certain things that I'm not plugged into time, and this is something that is very confusing to people. Now, there's a time matrix, and one day when I opened up to channel, and the Lords of Time came through, and I had no idea that there was such a being, or were beings called the Lords of Time. And so they've given me a lot of education, and um, there's actually a time matrix that everybody has fallen in line with, and you don't have to. I heard recently that there was a country that doesn't use clocks, a little tiny country that chose to set aside time and not let time rule them, because that's what they've used time to create a control matrix for us. So,
Right.
what does it mean that I'm not plugged into time? It means that I don't wear a watch. It means that if I need to be somewhere, I usually know when to leave without knowing what time it is. One time on an overseas flight, I was getting ready and I knew my flight was in the late afternoon. And I was pretty much ready. And I kept getting the message, you need to go to the airport now. You need to go to the airport now. So I thought, what the heck? I'm ready. Let's just go. So I did. And my flight had been canceled, but the airline was able to reroute me to an earlier flight because I was there. So, when you're not plugged into time, you doesn't mean you're not plugged. I'm not plugged into the time matrix. I am plugged into time. And the funniest thing happened recently. Um, I know you're gonna get my husband on the interview sometime, but I said to him, I can't figure out what's going on. We have 3 battery operated clocks, and all 3 of them are very specialized. They don't tick. They have alarms in them and they have lights in them. And this way, we don't have our cell phones in the bedroom and we don't have our cell phones in the meditation room. So I said, I can't figure out what's going on because I set all the clocks and now they're not the same. And I don't think it's the batteries. And he says, oh, yeah, I was playing around with the time matrix and I unhooked one of the clocks from the time matrix.
Mm, yeah.
And yesterday I looked and there were 15 minutes apart.
Wow.
And the one he had unhooked was the slower one. What does that tell you? And we've all heard people say, "Oh, time's speeding up." Well, maybe it is.
Well, we all experience time
Yeah.
differently. Time's malleable and, it's
Yeah,
flexible.
time is malleable.
And we can, I'm gonna pull a Maureen here and tell a story that corroborates what I'm about to say. So in construction, I was in commercial construction and for the union, and they would give us impossible deadlines. Like, I mean, actually like on paper, it's impossible.
Physically impossible.
And then they would shorten that. And everybody would be throwing up their arms and we'd have to stay late. There's no way we get this done. You're crazy, whatever. And everybody would throw their fit, like always. And somehow we would get it done, like almost every time. Despite the impossibility, we
Interesting.
we would still get it done. And I realized back then, because I was learning about time, and this is one of the things I'm fascinated with, I'm like, oh my God, we are collectively warping time and slowing down time or speeding it up, whatever it looks like, and allowing ourselves enough time to get this done and to finish this job. Somehow we did it, and it's actually even earlier than we thought. And we're like, how did we do that? And then we get, they pat us on the back, thank you, whatever. But then that bites us in the ass because then they shortened the deadline even more because they saw that we could do it in that amount of time. And then it got to the point where it was unhealthy, but
Yeah.
we can do it. And I was like, oh, we can warp time. And then I started taking that other places in life. So if I'm running late for something or I need to be, whatever the case is, I will consciously try to warp time and manipulate time. So even though GPS says I'm not going to get there on time, I can literally get there on time because you just know and you change that.
Mhm.
You speed up time for yourself.
Yeah.
Amanda
This
and I
is a
do
great
that.
discussion. Go ahead.
Amanda
What
and
are
I
you
do
say?
that all the time. She's always like, "We're gonna bend time. We're gonna get there. We're gonna bend."
Yeah,
And usually we do. We get
yeah.
there on time when we do that.
What's interesting is I was told a long time ago by my guides that time is a construct. It's
Yeah.
an application that we put on top of whatever we're doing. And, the way Tyler described it is perfect. Um, and it is also true that we can manipulate time, stretch time, compress time. On more than one occasion, a driving trip that takes 5 hours was accomplished in 3 hours. We've documented some of these times. So we know that it's possible to slip through time and that we can create time tunnels, which leads us to this whole business of time travel and opening time windows to slip back into the reality. But whenever that happens, now, do you have any recollection, Tyler, of a moment when you slid back into time, slid back into your present version of you, and everything was different for you? You had new skills or new understandings of life?
Yeah, I would say maybe it wasn't like overtly apparent right off the bat. but I would start to notice things were different, yeah. And sometimes I feel like we even switch alters, like, I'll be, like, in a different body one day, and I can notice, like, a different, "Oh, this is a different version of me today." And then, like, I have a more athletic build today, and this, like, it just I feel taller today, and I feel like that happens, yes.
There you
I
go.
like that one. I feel taller today. That's pretty cool.
Right. I mean, I genuinely do because I'm very curious. I've done a lot of mirror work, which I know that mirrors are portals and it can be dangerous and stuff. And I learned the hard way, but I've spent a lot of time observing myself and looking into the mirror enough where you can just stare between your eyes to where you literally melt out of existence. It's possible. Anybody can do it, and you start to become transparent. You see through yourself in the mirror, and you see the wall behind you and it freaks you out, and then the whole room will actually start to go dark too, and you like it looks starts to wave, the mirror will start to wave like the Matrix, and I almost wonder if you can't walk through it sometimes, um, but I understand that there's different versions of me when I look in the mirror because I've spent so much time doing that, and I've noticed, I'm like, "Oh, I quite literally" maybe other people wouldn't notice, but I notice it and feel it, so I think it happens more than we realize.
That's well said. I agree with that. My experience is the same.
Yeah, and as far as really quick, whenever you're at work and it's like, "My god, it's only noon. I felt like I've been here for 8 hours already." Maybe you are experiencing time differently that day because you're in a denser version of yourself or whatever it is, and things are slowed down. So you might literally be experiencing a longer day than the rest of the people around you, and that's why and then another day, you're like, "Oh my god, it literally flew by. I don't know how that happened." It's because it did fly by. It wasn't actually 8 hours. You experienced, you know, 4 hours and 8 hours or whatever the case is. I think that always happens, but we just don't understand the fundamentals of time to understand that that's actually what's going on.
Mhm. Mm.
So,
I like
um, I wanted to close with this because I don't know if it's your recent book or if you have a book coming out about the Akashic Records. And tapping into that, and this is something that you said something you said you've been into recently, so maybe I'll just turn it over to you. Explain to us, how you've tapped into these Akashic records and what the book is about and what that looks like.
Okay, so the book teaches you how to open the records, and it's very accurate. Lots and lots of tools in here, lots of shortcuts that people don't teach. I also have a very precise way to get in that uh, allows you to be at the highest possible level. Some people, when they open the records, they let anything come in, and that does bring suspects or inappropriate information that you think is accurate but is not. And so recently, I chose to create a 6-month training for people who are serious about reading for others and making it a business and making it an opportunity to learn and grow. Um, and the point of that is twofold. Number one, you would have a group of people that you're working with. It's not just you trying to learn something from one person or from an online training. Our trainings are live. We do all of our interactive coaching live. We work with you in many different ways, including giving you business skills and all the back end tools so that you could actually be certified and then listed on our website as a vetted guide, because there's tons of people out there that'll open your Akashic records, but you just don't know what you're getting into. And I have found that there are people who are supposedly opening the records, but they're not going very high, and or they have interference, and the interference can come from drug use, it can come from alcohol use, and when we drink, we put holes in our aura. Now, if you have a glass of wine or a beer, your field will repair within a day or two. So that's not a huge problem. But you wouldn't want to be actively working in the records every day and also having a glass of wine at night. That would not work. Um, and that's really important for people to understand. The other thing that we do that nobody else does that I know of is we work on clearing work. And what that means is, you and I can pick up entities. We walk through a hospital and we pick up some lost soul that, we didn't even know was there. And we start acting out some of their stuff that they wanted to express. There's two reasons why people who die don't go home to source. And one of them is they don't know they're dead. That's kind of obvious. But the second reason is they've got an agenda. Maybe they were mad at God because they died young. Maybe they wanted to accomplish something like Patrick Swayze in Ghost. So, the vehicle that receives information for a client, your own vehicle needs to be clean and clear. And in order to do that, we work with outside people who are expert at doing clearing work, as well as then teaching how to maintain cleanliness. And I kind of joke around. It's like, sometimes your carpets just get so dirty, you got to hire the people with the big equipment, but then you keep it clean. You spot it and you keep it vacuumed, and you don't need to have that person come in very often.
Right. Yeah, well said. I agree, and the Akashic Records are a fascinating place, and I really appreciate the fact that you've identified that some people are tapping in or there's interference, and I think that, people can come in and intercept that channel, that line of communication, and start
Right.
feeding you bad intel, which could send somebody down the wrong trajectory in life, and I think that absolutely happens. And, like, yeah, when you drink, the holes in your field, I agree with all that, I appreciate that. So whenever you're tapping into, I guess, the highest field, how would you know that you're not tapping into something that hijacked that line?
There's a number of ways. The number one is they don't tell you wacky things. I had one person channel that he was told to ask someone about having a threesome, and that definitely was not his record keepers. On other occasions, people are told that they're stupid or bad or anything like that would not be the record keepers, because they only speak in gentle, loving terms. Now, it doesn't mean they're not going to give you the hard truth. For example, one of our certified guides was telling a story how she asked in the records about the circumstances of her last job, and she had left the job and kind of made a scene when she left. And her record keepers basically told her she could have done better and that she could go back and apologize. That had not occurred to her. That she could go back to these people and say, "Look, I'm really sorry. I was in a terrible state. I was so unhappy. I wanted other people to suffer, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I shouldn't have done that." That's huge because it helps fix the matrix. It helps these people look at her with a good reputation, and it helps her change the records, because now the records have been cleaned up with a new behavior that overlaps the crappy behavior. So that was the record he was straightening someone out without being mean or obnoxious. So they always speak in kind ways. They always are answering your questions, and then they give advice. And this is another way you know it's the record keepers. So you might say, you might ask the record keepers, "Why is my brother not talking to me?" And they'll tell me, "Well, you did such and such, and he's got a wound from 3 lifetimes ago," or, whatever the story is. And then they'll say, and here's what you can do. You can, write a letter to spirit, write a letter to him in spirit and burn it. They'll give you some advice in addition to answering your questions. And that's another way it's the record keepers. And then we teach people the difference between their own guidance and the record keepers, and their intuition channel and their higher self channel and their guides channel. They all have separate frequencies. Initially, most of us think it's all one. "Oh, I had this brilliant idea." Well, maybe my guides dropped that in my brain, but I don't have any way to discern that. I don't know that that's what it is. It's like a child who grows up in a household where there's many languages being spoken. They might mix it all up in one little sentence. And then you say, "Well, you were speaking French and German," and they would look at you mystified because they wouldn't even recognize that they were mixing it up. And so that's one of the skills we teach in the coursework, is how to have discernment. We show them what it's like. And it's so beautiful when people get this, what I would call big aha, and they get it, that they're actually bringing forth powerful messages that are coming right through them. And in the method that we teach and in the protocol that I work with, it is so high that the information flows through you without hitting your intellect. What that means is you don't remember what you've said, and you might have some recollection if you went for tea afterwards or a cup of coffee with the person you read for. But secondly, you're not thinking it. It's just flowing through you like you're the radio speaker. And that in itself is very powerful because you don't even know you're going to say such a thing. I remember telling someone early on that she didn't need to fuss with her life vest when she got on her boat. And she said to me, "How did you know I had a boat?" And I started to laugh and said, "I didn't know you had a boat. That was the record keepers."
Right. Right. Yeah, and also
Yeah.
sometimes, I've seen this happen to people before who are channels or opening up these lines of communication. They'll literally start speaking words they don't know. Like they've never used that word before. They don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
They have to look it up.
That's another tip off.
Yeah.
You're using words that are quite elevated. So, even though you and I might say, take this book, um, the record keepers might say, see if you can borrow that book. They would use words that are elevated and respectful and loving. And that's another way. From you know the words, you are familiar with the words in the language, yet you and I don't necessarily use those words in everyday conversation.
Right.
That's another tip off that you're in the records.
Yeah, it's a word you've literally just never used or said, like, that you had to look up. I've seen people like, "I don't even know what this means," but then,
Yeah, that's happened to me where I said words I didn't know what they meant. Yeah.
right.
And I can
Yeah.
remember looking at a scientist and saying, do you know what I just said? And he said, yeah, keep going.
It's amazing.
Yes. Well, this has been amazing. I mean, we could go all day long and go deep into whatever, any number
Can
of.
we do one more? Can we
Yeah.
do one more
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, go ahead.
I just have one question. So there's all this hype right now about this 3-eye atlas
Oh, yeah.
little ship or comet or no one, have you tapped into that at all, or have you gotten anything on that?
I have tapped into that. And, I haven't been that interested in it. But one day in meditation, I thought, oh, let me remote view that. And I connected with this group, and it is a living ship, like a plasma type ship. And there are beings on the device that I saw that were nebulous and multicolored, but like iridescent type colored. And there was another being like a black ant, but it wasn't a frightening thing. It was just, a different type of being that was the pilot of this ship or device. And the pilot was not connected to these people. It was almost like he or she was a hired pilot. So it wasn't, he wasn't part of that group. And I also got that they were being escorted and they somehow managed to use a shortcut. And I think, like in Dune, how they use the travelers that go through time, space. And so I have a feeling that this particular pilot was kind of like that he knew a way to get from point A to point B that was better than this group had access to, perhaps. Maybe he created the field that allowed for this to occur. And so they used our reality as a shortcut, so that it was never intended that they were part of our reality. And I don't see them interacting with any humans per se. And on second thought, like a couple of days later, I was thinking about the information I received, and I wondered if they were like embryos that were being planted somewhere new and special, and that's why there wasn't much, I'll call it, communication. I did ask them if they were hostage, and they wouldn't answer that question. And then I said, well, is there anything I can do to support you? And they said, you can send us love.
That's beautiful.
Oh, it always comes back to love. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can add that to the list of a number of theories out there now that people have tapped into. It's amazing. I look at this and I don't discount anything that people are saying about it, because a lot of people I trust and I know that they're doing their very best to tap into the information, but we're getting mixed.
Many
re-
different.
yeah,
Well, I almost wonder if it's just multi-layered. You know what I'm saying? I wonder if there's just different dimensions and different layers that's all connected to it. So people are tapping into different
Well,
things, maybe,
any of the fear stuff, in my opinion, is
except for that. Right.
energies that are deliberately milking the opportunity to scare.
I agree 100%.
I don't remember
100%
the
agree.
name of the movie, but I saw a movie where, um, a couple of teenagers are trying to play a trick on another teenager and get him to do something, and he showed up in a Darth Vader costume, uh, and scared the bejeebers out of this kid, making the kid believe that that actually happened, that Darth Vader was in his room. And so
Right.
anything dark that we're hearing,
Yeah.
any of that,
Yeah.
It's
we're way past any kind of mass destruction or any kind of invasion that cannot and will not occur. It will not be tolerated. And that's straight from source. We will never have World War III. We will never have destruction on this planet. We've gone way too far to the good.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like being 18, and between 18 and maybe 33, you do what you want to do. And then you figure out what's important and you step into your true mission.
Yeah.
And so, these energies can be implying trouble, but we're already way past that. We're past that age of not making it, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. But the old system that's going away is they keep trying to pull us back, even though it's not working, because we've outgrown that. But they keep trying, right? So the media's still putting out, it's probably an alien hostile race that's going to invade, like
Well,
all this, there's all this kind of like fear putting
yeah.
out there that they're trying to get humanity. They're throwing these Hail Marys, basically last ditch efforts to try to get humanity locked down back into fear, back into the matrix, back into
Well, think about this. I've only heard the term Hail Marys as a term used to the saving grace, and you just used it in the opposite way, which I think is quite comical.
Yeah. Right.
They use it in football. I mean, all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's interesting. It's just a long
desperate attempt is what I meant.
Desperate attempt.
Yeah, a desperate attempt. A long shot is not going to play.
Shot. Right. But they're trying because they don't have any other cards to play at this point.
I mean,
right?
Three Eye Atlas is an opportunist dream, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're just taking advantage of the opportunity to exploit it, and whatever that looks like. I'm sure, these intelligence agencies have teams putting out fake information just to even muddy the waters, just because the devil thrives on confusion. I mean, it's all happening. So we just have to be vigilant and self-aware, and then know yourself and know what information is true or not.
Because they're not allowed
to do unconditional love.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't hurt.
Unconditional love. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think they wanted to do the fake blue beam alien invasion thing, but they're not allowed to do that. So I think they're going to use any little thing they can like this to try to do the same thing, but it's not going to work, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to read something from your website, Maureen, and then we're going to end this because I think it's amazing. And I guess is what you offer to people who want to book a course with you or whatever. Guiding you through the opportunities the fifth dimension has to offer, Maureen reveals how to develop a deeper self-connection, increase your sensitivity to dimensional signatures, and consciously choose 5D, where love is the governing force. She shows how 5D relates to 3D as well as to 4D, the transitional dimension between the two, and explains how to read the energy patterns and distinguish one dimension from the next, as well as how to experience multiple dimensions simultaneously. She explores how to identify the differences between polarized 3D linear thinking and dynamic 5D multidimensional thinking, and how to turn 3D viewpoints around to expand your perception of what is possible. I think that's beautiful. I love that. And I think we kind of that was the premise for our entire conversation today. But if anybody wants more of that, I would encourage you to go to Maureen's website and see what she has to offer. And can you please let our audience know what that website is and your app and all that stuff again, and the books?
StGermainMysteryschool.com. So ST without a dot, StGermain.com. Oh, wait, St. Germain Mystery School, then.com. We are on social media. We also have an app called Illuminate with over 35 guided meditations. It's a free app, and there's like 7 meditations on it for free. So you could, conceivably get by with just those 7 if you wanted. One of them is an award-winning meditation, one of the free ones. And I did that on purpose so that you would have the benefit of that beautiful work. Let's see. We do have essential oils that we sell, and we're rebranding. So we're letting this particular grouping sell out, and then we're rebranding it and coming out with a new release. These blends were built for the purpose of emotional healing, and they come with cards that show you what the blend is all about. And we encourage people to, if they can, buy the full set and then use it every day and really grow quickly in their emotional healing. You don't have to do your emotional healing the long way or the hard way all the time. Tools like this really make a big difference. So this is why this was brought to me, and this is why we carried. I've been selling these oils for like 15 years, and then people just love them. So if you're interested in that, you have to go to our website that's called oils.stgermainmysteryschool.com. Our school itself is also on our website, and that's where you can take live coursework like what we're doing with the Akashic Records, and also video recorded classes that I have classes on sacred geometry, on Mary Magdalene, on remote viewing that's coming up. We have classes on clearing entities, sound healing. So we're growing our base. It's not all my work, which is wonderful because we're really wanting to support other teachers besides ourselves. Our goal is to be assisting others on the planet and to create a transformational training organization that globally impacts all of humanity. So that's why we do what we do.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
That's incredible.
Yeah, those essential oils sound wonderful. And after speaking to your husband about how he connects with the plants and even deciding which oils to use or which plants to use, so they're very consciously created. And I love that. And he's actually working in harmony with the plants themselves to create the perfect recipe. And we'll talk about that with him when we have him on. But I'm very excited about everything you're doing. I think it's wonderful, and I hope our audience enjoyed this. And the links for all your stuff are below. And we hope to see you guys in Hawaii. It's going to be a blast. And until next time, have a great evening, everybody. We love you, and good night.
Good night.
Hey guys, Journey to Truth is going to Hawaii. Join us in 2026 for Journey to Truth's first ever vacation conference on the Big Island at the beautiful Queen Emma Community Center in Kona. Enjoy Hawaii as we travel to sacred sites and connect with our Lemurian past and reactivate the land. It's time to get our bodies moving and take a boots on the ground approach to the awakening. We'll also be making a trip to Volcano National Park to pay our respect to Pele, the goddess of fire. We'll then journey to the water for an ocean adventure with our multi-dimensional aquatic family. We'll gear up and head to the harbor as we set sail under the sun for an activating day on the water while we experience the Hawaiian ocean life like never before. Enjoy Hawaiian sunsets and walks on the beach while connecting with soul family and learning a few things from our amazing lineup of speakers. Aloha! Grab your ticket today at journeytotruth.online and join us for this once-in-a-lifetime activating getaway.